So welcome, everybody. Delighted and honored that you're here to be part of this in-depth inquiry into the first century Aramaic language of Yeshua and the awesome tools that are given there that help us to remove ourselves from the insanity of what's going on in the world. You know, there's a passage where in the traditional scriptures he says, I have overcome the world. And he's not talking about I've overcome what's going on out there. He's talking about I've overcome the world between my ears. And so having done that, the world out there can't run me. I'm in this world, speaking of the physiology, but not of it. I don't have any realities in my mind that people can pull my chain by so that I go into hostility or fear. I've cleaned up my own mind. And I found that space where this presence of love is for this community is inside of me. Not out there somewhere, not somewhere up in the sky, not somewhere off in space, but rather right here inside of me. And if somebody tells you it's over there, or wherever, don't believe them. It's a lie. It's a fraud. But it's here now, and it is within you. And the invitation is to go within and recognize that if you do your work, then the reward will appear. And so we're covering a text entitled The Gospel of Thomas, if you're new to the show. And the Gospel of Thomas is a text that is, rather than a story of the scriptures, as most of the other stories are, it's simply a set of statements. And we're on statement 60, so we've gone through 1 and 60 over the last few weeks. And statement 60, they saw a Samaritan. Now, remember that a Samaritan is a sect apart from the Jews. It's kind of a rejected, related, but rejected. They're sort of they come from a different Judaic tradition, and the Samaritans proclaim themselves Jews, but Jews kind of push them away. So as they saw a Samaritan carrying a lamb going into Judea, said to his disciples, why does he carry the lamb? They said to him that he may kill it and eat it. He said to them, so long as it is alive, he will not eat it, but if he kill it and it become a corpse, and they said, otherwise he will not be able to do it. He said to them, you also seek for yourselves a place within for rest, lest you become a corpse and be eaten. Like, wow, what does that mean? So remember that when a child comes into the world, one of the mistakes we made, and I lament that I didn't know any better when my children were born 42 and 44 years ago. I did not understand this, but like most parents, what should I say? I invited them and repeatedly, what's the word I'm looking for? I want to say seduced, because that's kind of what the world does, but it wasn't, for me it wasn't that. It was just, it's like, life is out here, folks. Life is out here. And if we live life out there, then as he says here, we become a corpse. If we think the outer world, that is the world that it really isn't even an outer world. It's an internal projection. You know, when you realize that you've never seen anything with your eyes, that's kind of, I would say, the first stage in awakening. when you realize that you have never in your life seen anything with your eyes. Your eye is the receiving device, absolutely, and it receives light. It receives information through light waves. And according to the content of your mind, those light waves stimulate or resonate information in you, and the information that is resonated in you produces a world, produces a construct. The same with the ear. You don't hear with your ears. Sound energy comes in through the ear, and according to what is in you, you hear. And maybe this is a better, the auditory is a better example than the visual. The visual can be a little confusing. It's so convincing. But, you know, I tell a story oftentimes. You've heard me tell it before, but it fits here again, helps to build the brain cells. We have a fellow that wants to come to an intensive. You're the best translator of Russian into English and English into Russian in the world. And I know you've got an extra room in your home and that you love to speak Russian. And so I tell you, this fellow wants to come to an intensive for a week with us, and he has no place to stay and no one to translate. He doesn't understand English. And of course, I don't speak any Russian. And you say, I'd be delighted to pick him up at the airport and translate for him and drop him back off at the airport. That would be awesome. And at the end of the week, I want to convey what a great time we've had with this fellow, so I ask him if you will tell him that I think he's really cool. Now, the brain cells you have for cool, you're not familiar. You've recently come from Russia. You are an excellent translator of Russian, and you've learned English very well, but you haven't lived in an English country. So I use an American idiom using the word cool, and most people who are listening to this show right now know that I mean really neat, decent, like you, connect with you, you're awesome. Our Russian friend who's doing the translating has never lived somewhere where that idiom has been used and is not familiar with it, so when he turns to this Russian gentleman who's been here for the week, he turns to him and says that I think he's got a low body temperature, that he's cool. And, of course, he translated my words perfectly. Why did he translate my words perfectly but not say anything about what I meant? Because when I set my voice box in motion, the brain cells that were firing me had to do with what I think of this person as a person. But when that when that sound wave, that movement of molecules hit his ear and his eardrum, and when his eardrum started to vibrate the bones in the ear, which create an electrical signal that resonate brain cells, they weren't the brain cells that resonated in him. What resonated in him was something about body temperature. So his listening, what he heard, what was projected from his brain cells was body temperature. And again, he translated my words perfectly. But he didn't say a word about what I meant because he didn't have the same brain cells firing as I did for that word cool. So in exactly the same way, light energy brings information in, same as that vibrating molecule of sound brought light energy, brought information in, caused brain cells to fire. But if the brain cells that fire in you are different than the brain cells that fire in somebody else, obviously you're going to, quote unquote, hear or see because you've got a different set of brain cells. And so what Yeshua is saying here is, there is an inner world in you. If there's something in the inner world that has resonated into activity, then it will formulate a construct called perception, and it paints, in effect he's saying, it paints a picture on the inside of your eyeballs, and when you look at the pictures on the inside of your eyeballs, you think you're looking out there. And so most people are focused in the world out there. So he says, you seek yourselves a place within for rest. He's saying, do this, lest you become a corpse and be eaten. So he's saying, if you're focused, if you think that what your eye is showing you is in the outer world and you're disconnected from the inner world, you're dead. Remember he said, the dead bury the dead, the blind lead the blind. Even if the information that is painted on the inside of our eyeballs is accurate about what's going on in the world, we're still separated from the actuality of what's happening. So he's saying here, find a time every day, more than once a day, where you close your eyes, where you go inside, and find that place within. Otherwise, you become stuck in the outer world and get lost in it. So that's saying 60 from the Gospel of Thomas. And Miss Jeannie, we're at about 1:15. Just checking to see if you've got anybody in the phone queue with a hand up or anything happening in the chat room.
I did get my computer back up so I can see the switchboard.
Cool.
And there is nothing
right.
going on right here. It's all quiet.
Okay. Well, if you're out there in listener land, our call-in number is 563-999-3581. If you have a question or a comment for us, if there's any way we can support you, if you call that number, you'll be listening directly to the show. And if you're listening to the show directly and you push 1, that will raise a hand in the control panel, and we'll be having a conversation. So if you've got a question for us, a thought, any way we can support you, then please push 1. Let's talk about it. So saying 61, Yeshua says, 2 shall rest upon a bed, one shall die and the other live. Well, if one lives in the inner world, then they are truly alive. Again, when he says, the dead bury the dead, the blind lead the blind, he's not talking about physically dead people. He's talking about those who do not have contact with the inner life. He's talking about those who are not in contact with who they are as the active presence. Although I was talking to someone yesterday and we were doing some processing around this young man that's helping us in the garden some, and he was asking some questions about what we did. And I asked about holding a newborn child. You know, have you ever held one? He says, yeah, several times. And wow, that's amazing. Did you function as that? He said, no. Do you think you started out the same as that? Well, yeah, probably. So what happened? Why don't you function as love all the time? And it was like a kind of a shocker of a question for him. And when we're brainwashed by the hostility and fear-based world, then we lose our eternal lives to that. We're designed to live literally, physiologically. Now, I know this sounds ridiculous to most people because who could believe it? Everybody's dying. You know, you get your 420 or whatever, your 320. Again, pardon me. And yet, is that a requirement? Is that a necessity? Or is that because we literally are the person who's, as he uses the example here, resting upon a bed and dead? So our body gets up and walks and talks. Tell, you know, in essence, what he's saying in this particular passage, 61, says you can't tell by looking at somebody externally whether they're alive or dead. If active, present love is moving in them, then you've got a person that is alive. If hostility, fear, rage, guilt, grief, drama, and trauma are what were in someone's life, then they're dead. And externally, they look the same laying on the bed. Salome says, "Who art thou, O man, and whose son? Thou hast mounted my bed and eaten from my table." Jesus said to her, "I am he who is that which is equal. To me was given the things of my Father." So he's saying here, we're all the same. People want to make something special of Yeshua. And you'll remember, and of course, a lot of people want to ignore him because they need some sort of a hero to look up to. But when they called him special names, he said, "Well, why do you call me perfect? None of us is perfect. We're all the same." So he says, "I am he who is from that which is equal. To me was given the things of my Father." In other words, he's saying, tie this in with the last statement. I've spent enough time inside to discover the inner realm, the inner life, where the true riches are, where the true richness of life is. The person who lives from a construct of their mind, what they think they are, there is no life in that. There's only existence. Remember the kids a few decades ago, had a song out, and it's driving beat. I can't get no satisfaction. If you're living from a state of being, what you get is satiation. You look to achieve a goal, and by achieving a goal, you get a hit of dopamine, which has been called happy powder, and you go, "Oh, I'm happy," for a minute. "Oh, I'm happy again." No goals, no achievement, no dopamine. "Oh, I'm depressed, I'm in pain." And so, to awaken to the truth of who we are. So Salome says, "I'm your disciple. I'm here to learn from you." And Yeshua says to her, "Therefore I say, when it is equal, it will be filled with light, but when it is divided, it will be filled with darkness." In other words, he's saying in that last passage, find rest in the inner world, and then from the inner world live and bring the expression. If you live attuned as you're designed to. Remember the Aramaic word prayer means to set a trap for God. It's got nothing to do with putting your order into the cosmic gift catalog and telling the Creator what the Creator should be doing for you today. That's petition. But prayer, literally translated, means to set a trap for God. And when you think of and you recognize that we live in an energy system, you must understand that in terms of truth, what he was talking about was energy. If I have a TV antenna on the roof and it's properly lined and properly shaped, structured, then I get this beautiful picture and beautiful sound in my TV. The TV antenna, the signal that gives me a picture and sound. If I disconnect the TV antenna, I get no picture or sound in my TV. If I'm disconnected from being, if I'm disconnected from my true self, the TV has snow and white light and such, but there's no picture or sound there. There's no true content there. If it's simply functioning as this physical device, if your body mind unit, which stores information and can make pictures and sounds and all those things, but if they're not connected they don't flow from being. If you're not aligned with the active presence of love, then being doesn't exist. When we are aligned, we're told that in the Creator's energy field, in Him we live, move, and have our being. We're moving through space at about 7,000 miles an hour. In a physics world, that means that if you are a certain frequency being and you're moving through the energy field of another frequency being that is attuned, then you capture, you trap that energy, and you're therefore able to reflect it into the world. What are we told that being is? The creator in which we live, move, and have our being. We're told the creator is love, and we are offspring or expressions of love. If we're aligned, if we're attuned, if we are a trap, and what they called the Lord's Prayer was a set of instructions for how to align and orient yourself so that literally you capture the active presence of love in which you're moving about 7,000 miles an hour, and you get to reflect that into the world. I mean, literally, we look around, we say, no, the planet's standing still. No, it's not. It's moving at about 7,000 miles an hour. When you get two fields moving through each other that have a matching frequency, that are attuned to each other, then they become a trap for each other. Capture each other's energy, and the weaker of the two fields reflects the energy of the stronger. You and I are designed to be aligned and oriented so that we capture literally this active presence of love and are able to flow it or presence it into the world. Misaligned, disconnected from that, living out of physiology, it's like the TV set. There just isn't any signal here. You've got to be oriented, aligned. You've got to be connected in order to reflect the signal. Prayer is about being oriented and aligned so that you capture a signal that fills your physiology. Every cell in your structure is continuously singing out with the presence of love. If you've overwritten that with the world's game of hostility, fear, rage, guilt, grief, drama, and trauma, then you say, well, no love here. I got some guilt, some grief, some drama and trauma for you, a little hate, a little fear. And you look at how many people today, that's like all that they have. And they're cut off from what they're designed to. What Yeshua is doing here is he's saying, stay connected. When there is an alignment, so let's repeat that last phrase. Therefore I say, when it is equal, it will be filled with light. When the frequency that you're operating at is your true being, that word equal would be when we're in resonance, then there literally is an inflow, an energy inflow of light. That's like saying when the antenna is connected, you get a picture and sound. Prayer would be the same word as connecting the antenna. There's an inflow of light, but when it's divided, when there's hostility or fear, then literally the mind and physiology is filled with darkness. And the physiology is like a hard drive that stores information, and if we're constantly storing, if we spent a lifetime storing hostility, fear, rage, drama, and trauma, then the system can only stand that, can only handle that for so long, and it starts to break down. And the breakdown process is called disease. And so be aware of who you are as a human being, be aligned, and function out of that active presence of love. And be willing to forgive anything that moves in you that's unlike it, so you're not divided by hostility or fear. That word light and love would be synonymous words. If you're divided, if your physiology is capable, and I don't know anybody that's achieved this state, but I'll just say personally from my own process, my own inner process work, I look back into the early days of doing this work, and divided was the name of the game. Pain and rage, abuse, guilt. After years of doing my work, well, there's still a few layers of that, but nothing compared to the early days of my life. And you look at so many people who are in their early years divided, and that division goes on and on and on until literally their physiology, their emotional health, their mental health is just falling apart. And so as we're saying, if you're divided from that light, and the opposite of light is darkness, we would say hostility and fear, then darkness becomes one's lot in life. And we're here to create a space to open and get free of the darkness. Literally, the word forgive in Aramaic describes not the fact that you've got pain and you're going to let the person you're blaming off the hook for your pain, because you'll notice that, you've been through that particular pain 87 different times with 42 different people. Read my book, and that's the whole bottom line. Why is this happening to me again? If you don't have a copy of my book, unfortunately, I can't sell you one because it's out of print. Been thinking lately of reprinting it. But you can go to our website and download it free. So if you go to www.whyagain.org/book, whyagain.org/book, and you'll find the Why Is This Happening to Me Again in about, I think, 9 different languages at this point. They're free. For the person who thinks that forgiveness is about, I'm going to let you off the hook for what's happening inside of me, of course, by doing that, they never change what's happening inside of me, and they get to live the title of my book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? Each time any form of darkness, any form of hostility or fear comes up in you, what we invite you to do is to utilize the forgiveness process to literally remove that hostility and fear and come back to the truth of who you are. And the truth of who you are is you are literally created of active present love. That's what you're designed to express and to experience, that light, that presence. And we are at about the 30-minute point, so I'm going to just check with Jeannie again and see if we have anything happening in the chat room or anything happening in the phone queue, sweetie.
Susan has her hand up. Welcome, 610.
Awesome.
You're
Say hello
on
to the young lady. Welcome, dear heart. How are you? Hello, Susan. Are you mute challenged?
Actually, I just got booted off again, so let me try to turn her on one more time. There you go. Okay, are you on?
We did it. Yes, we got you, young lady. I can hear you loud and clear.
Good. I have a question related to all this. And thinking about Jeannie with Ryan and me with my boy, who's not getting out of bed today. He's feeling that badly. I think for parents, possibly even more for mothers, I'm not sure, the added challenge of watching a child go through a hard thing or imagining that the child is suffering. And there's always, I'm in fear as I'm doing this, but I've gotten to the point where I can step away from it and feel my centered self as okay. But the other thing is very real.
Yes.
And I'm not sure I'm just fooling myself or, oh, now my dog is making a poop. Oh, no, she isn't. Okay, let's go over the bridge. It's going to be a dual process thing. Anyway, Jeannie wrote me a long description of what's going on, and there's a lot of sadness in there.
Ryan.
Yeah, and maybe fear. It seems as if, and I don't mean to say there's no way out, but it does seem to come with the territory. You get a kid, and the connection is tremendous. And
literally, they've proven that you are still carrying some of the cells from his body in your brain.
Okay.
That's the depth of the resonance with the mother.
Yeah. So
anything that happens with him moves in you for sure.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Okay, I'm picking up a VM as we talk. I'm going to put my phone in my bag here and keep talking. Successful removal of turd from the lawn. All right. Yes.
Okay. TMI.
This is all right. So, I could give you specifics. They're not really necessary, but Jeannie's been on my mind, and my heart goes out to you, Jeannie, because you said it's easier to write because if I talk, I'll cry, and
right.
I don't think it's probably a good idea to try not to feel those things. They are also a gift from God. They are part of creation. And if we can breathe into that, we might be able to get a little more centered and balanced. But it's just,
exactly.
I guess I'm just saying it's such a challenge.
Well, the point I would make here in the context of this particular statement from Yeshua is if there's light, then there's light. If there's darkness, then there's darkness. And if we think back to some of the initial conversations that you were having about the challenges that your son was going through, you remember there were tears and a lot of pain and grief, a lot of darkness in you.
Yeah.
Apart from his experience, your own darkness.
Right.
And notice that today as you speak about it, and I've watched you, listen to you progressively move forward to where there's more and more light in your voice and in your being, even though he's going through some of those things as you do your work.
Yeah, I think that's true. But
how many generations?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Have to keep doing your work. But how many generations do you suppose? And, I mean, we live in an easy, healthy world compared to a generation ago, or 2, or 3, or 4, or 10. How many traumatic mother-son experiences do you suppose there are that are in your genes, my genes?
Yeah.
Jeannie's genes. How much of that do you suppose is there? And so, to me, the willingness to process that darkness is what empowers us to be the space to bring forward the healing and to stand in a healed space filled with, as Yeshua says in this particular statement, filled with light, rather than the conflicting energy of darkness. And ultimately, what empowers us, the healing power of just, even if I don't know what to do, I don't have a clue what to say. This is so deep. I don't have a clue what to say. But can I just be there, breathing as the presence of love? And what a gift that is.
Yeah. That's good to be reminded, because my son, as I was leaving his bedroom, taking the dog out, he said he just didn't have the wherewithal to even walk the dog, and she hadn't been out this morning. A long story. I usually walk the dog in the morning, but he just said, I can't do it. And then he apologizes. Sorry, because he knows, because he has a son who's got anxiety. He knows that mothers feel awful when this sort of thing is happening. And I say to him, this is your journey. This is what you're going through, and I'm witnessing that, and I'm loving you, and I'm here, but I'm not going to go down those tubes anymore. He said, that's great. Well, I think I'm bluffing partly, but I'm doing it.
Well, of course, we all want to put on the best front possible, and there's a show there But at the same time, what I hear is there's a genuine reduction in the suffering that you have over his suffering.
Yeah, I think
and that's
so.
what empowers us to heal.
You know,
that's exactly what Yeshua was talking about in this statement of the light. You know, as light becomes more, what? The dark part of us, the ego part of us, becomes less. Go ahead, is he?
Well, I've mentioned this many times because I'm going through journals. It was my mind shifters, basically. These were my processing since college on. And as soon as I had a boy and a girl, the amount of suffering he went through as a teenager, I would go to the journals when I wasn't feeling good, so they're lopsided on the suffering side.
Right.
You know, it's even hard to read. I have to do breathing to read some of the challenges he had at school. For instance, he was a master baseball player at school, top of the team, but having such anxiety that he was put on a medication. And when they came back at the second semester, he couldn't hit the balls. He couldn't catch them. His timing was off because of his pills. And his teammates made fun of him.
Drugs will do that.
They were bullies.
Yeah.
And then the coach was informed, this is why this is happening with Jonathan. Go easy on him. And the coach explained it to the boys, and the boys turned around and were kind to him, but he couldn't play on the team. He was not a valuable player. So he would suit up and take attendance and sit on the sidelines. They thought that was a compensation or the word, I don't know, a gift. He was miserable. And then when they had the final dinner, the end of the season, the boys had forgotten all that, and they made fun of him. Why don't you suit up, Bingham? And he took his meal, and he sat by himself and ate by himself and kept himself together. Got back to the dorm where he was living. He had chosen to go away to school. We hated that idea, but he wanted to. It was the Bingham tradition and all that. He was at Groton School. Called us at 11 p.m., absolutely sobbing, just wrecked by this situation. And reading that was triggering, just reading that. And he tells me, he wants to read what I wrote. I said, you don't need to re-experience that. You don't need that. I'm just telling you, it's all in there. It's recorded for posterity, and it may never go anywhere because it's only our stuff, you know. But I was surprised at how triggering it was just to read about it, which means at the time, Tim and I were really in need of the tools. And having no tools, you know. But the effect of reading these journals, I was telling Dr. Tim, I feel as if I'm getting, it's like an inoculation. I see the pattern over and over and over again. Attachment.
There's a book about that.
Yeah, I know. So even it's been a long process, but to read a whole lifetime and having it pop up in your face, every time there's an entry, the issue is there. Then at my late age, I come upon the tools, and I could have used them back then, but didn't have them. And this was my only recourse. Therapy, which was somewhat of a relief, but not a real help, and finally, tools. I don't know where I'm going with all this, Michael, but it isn't easy. I just feel as if it's just ongoing, and I'm barely strong enough to stand on my own 2 feet.
Yeah. I hear you.
Come on. Yeah. Well, and I hope...
And notice how
what?
Devastated you were in those early writings.
Yeah.
and how you're progressively moving to where there's more and more light in you, even when you're with him personally in that trauma.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
true.
I wish, because I've seen this over and over and over and over again for decades, people who use the tools and progressively eradicate that from their lives, and people who refuse to use it. And unfortunately, because their mindset is one of trauma, they generate more reasons for trauma, and they just deepen it.
Yeah.
And I wish
well,
we
that's
could.
The question I have is,
Go ahead.
like my sister was traumatized. My younger sister was traumatized, to my mind, to the point where she was not well enough to use the tools or believe that the tools could help. She was in that place where she thought, this is my lot, and I'm going to suffer, and I'm going to blame the world because it's the world's fault, and she won't move off that, and she'll go to her grave that way. And I'm wondering if that, the people who use the tools are the lucky ones. They are the ones who somehow had enough light to start with, that they could use the tools. That's sort of a question, because what I'm saying is, maybe your feeling is anybody can use the tools. Well, they have to decide to. What makes you have to be healthy enough to decide to.
Well,
I guess that's...
I wish I knew if there was some magic way of understanding what makes the difference, because I've seen people in ultra extreme pain who picked up the tools and used them and free themselves. And I've seen people that are in, medium types of pain who just stay there and never touch the tools, even though they hear them. And I see other people who start to use them, get a taste of it, but then, and this one I do, those other two I don't really understand what makes the difference. The one that I think I do understand is many people are attracted to tools, start to use them because they drop into depths that they've forgotten were there and have to deal with it, resist, and throw the tools away and get lost there. And, it's like most people, unfortunately, are motivated by pain. Pain makes their ears grow. Oh, I hear there's something I can do. And then there are people, and I don't know what makes the difference. I don't know what makes them willing. There are people who do it through choice, who go, oh, I'm in pain, and I say I'm seeking tools. I find them, I use them, and I start freeing myself from pain. I wish I knew what the magic formula was, Aside from building the brain cells to understand the possibilities, I don't know what else is possible. There's also that old statement, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, but you can make him thirsty. Yeah. And if one demonstrates the use of the tools, I think it makes it easier for someone else to go, oh, wow, that actually works. The only other thing that I know of, or that at least appears to me, is that people have tried everything that they know of, and it doesn't work, and therefore when something comes along that really has a potential to work, they're like, well, I've already tried everything, so that won't work either. And they don't really do it. I wish I knew the difference. I wish.
I wonder if it's
I've done everything I can over the decades to understand and make it available. And certainly people don't universally take a hold of it. That's all you can do.
Yeah. I've wondered if it's some basic natal vitality. This is just questions, thoughts, or whether it's the dimension in one's psyche or consciousness that allows the idea of God in, however you define that chosen ideal. The idea you say in the wake-up sheet, asked to be shown, that throws the door open for a wisdom and a healing that we don't have in a closed system. And I do know this about my little sister. She appears to be a closed system. There's nobody who's going to help her. The door is shut and nobody can get in. But I don't think it has to be formal religion. It has to be the idea that the answer is available, even if we can't imagine what it would be.
I hear you. You know, an example, and I don't know. I don't know exactly what age this young man is. He was actually on the show last week. First time he contacted us, he called me directly, and he started to do the codependence work. He sounds like he's very young, like maybe in his 20s. I don't know. We haven't gotten that connected in our conversation, but he was going to call into the show today, and he got busy, and he sent me a text. And I'm just going to read his text, and I'm sure he'll. I'm not going to, speak of who he is, and I'll tell him I read his text and as an example. But I mean, he's had very, very little contact with the work, and so we'd originally communicated about talking today. He wrote to me, and he said yesterday, he said, I won't be able to be on the show until Thursday or Friday. It's crazy how much I'm wanting to punish others lately. I keep telling myself to remain in love consciousness and act how I want to act. Hurt people, hurt others. It's my insanity that wants to punish. I intend to forgive this part of me now. Just keep seeing it with love and understanding. It's like, where did this kid come from with this kind of, willingness and understanding? I don't know.
Right.
He just came out of the blue, and he's ready to rock with it.
It is, and synchronicity, the fact that he found you, that's miraculous.
And that kind of communication from somebody who's just starting out, I mean, I've almost never seen it. So I wish I knew what made the difference. I wish there was a magic wand, the wave that could open that space of willingness. And who knows what all, trying to figure it out. Who knows what all the factors are? I don't. But I do know that the more people, when Yeshua talks about critical mass, a little leavening leavens the whole loaf, it actually brings up a time for me back in the early days of doing this work and looking at all the trauma in the world, the hate and the rage and the murder and such. And there was a point where it's like, this is really useless. Like, how could we get to all those people who are doing that kind of trauma? And there was a point where I came across that idea where Yeshua said, a little leavening leavens the whole loaf, talking and realizing, because my background's in physics, realizing he's talking about physics. And we don't have to get to everybody to open the space. All we need is enough people who'll step in. And the stronger the light gets, the easier it is for people, I think, metaphorically, to see it, not that it's necessarily visual, but to see it and go, oh, I'm ready for that. I want some of that.
That's very much of a relief to you, I bet, Michael. Suddenly you don't have
to was a relief
personally connect to everybody and save the world all by yourself.
And I wish there was a way that Jonathan was willing, and I could put my hands on him and support him with some breath.
Oh, I know. Today
so we'll hold the space. And
2-year anniversary of becoming sober from alcohol. Now he's facing the fact that he is now addicted to a punishing girl, and it may be that he's addicted to punishing females, and he'll have to start again with a new sobriety program so that he's healthy enough to have a real girlfriend. Anyway, I interrupted.
Well, he's on my list to call. So, seeing as how it is his anniversary, I will definitely make that call today.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
And offer that support.
Thanks.
Pretty powerful.
You guys have.
He's come from where he was, 3 years ago?
He was drinking for
his
years.
First worksheets? Yeah.
We were living here, so it was in the last 13, 12 years, but it's less than that, I think. Yeah, to be keeping that sobriety. Now he knows he's not sober in a whole other way, but he understands it. Yeah. Whoops, are you still there? I pressed the button by accident. I'm letting the dog in. Good.
You're loud and clear. And, I think he'll find this addiction to be easier to break free from because he's handled a lot of pain to get rid of his first addiction. And so it's a continuation of his work.
Yeah, I think so too. That's a good thing to say to him. I have not said that to him, but that would be very encouraging to him to hear that.
I will make sure to make mention of it. Yes.
Good. Thank you.
He's cleared away a whole layer to be able to free himself of the compulsive use of alcohol and next level of pain coming up.
Yeah. Well, that's true.
And I suspect, from what you've told me of his history, that it's not so much about an addiction to a woman, it's addiction to someone who approves of him, where there was so much disapproval from his power person.
Yeah. Well, she's a real punisher, and she punishes herself. She has this eating disorder, and says that she would leave him before she would stop being bulimic. That's how she gets high. That's her religion. That's really wild.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Boy, do I have
joining you and holding this space.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks.
And appreciating
so
the
how
work you've done to be able to... Go ahead.
How are you and Jeannie doing? I know you're taking a trip and renting a place and going to hang out with Ryan in the hospital and help with kids and, oh my goodness, full grandparenthood.
We're doing well. We're a little bit of pining for both of us because with the baby being born and the kids, they each have... Gabby has a little longer than Ryan had, but I think 3 months of maternity leave. So Aria, we hardly see her because she's home with her mom and dad. I think that's going to be, I was mentioning to Jeannie this morning, it's probably going to be a challenge for her when her mom goes back to work and her dad is already back at work, that she's not going to be with them full time. Always, whenever the opportunity has come in the 6 years we've been taking care of her, if there's ever an opportunity to come and spend a night with us, she's just like, oh, I'm going to Nini's for the night.
Yeah.
And when was it, Jeannie? Recently, like within the last week or 10 days, she had the opportunity to come and she's like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go to Nini's. Like, what? But she's got mom and dad she's had for now 8 weeks. Mom and dad totally, completely to herself. Of course, her brother's been there, but he's part of, the whole family's together. And she's really, she, for a kid of 6, talks a lot about family and how she just wants to be with family. And so, I think it brought a little bit of stuff up, especially for Jeannie, of she doesn't want to come and stay with us. Do you have any thoughts to share about that, Jeannie?
Well, yeah, which I totally understand it. you know, and
Yes.
I told Ryan and Gabby, I said, you know, I totally understand. It's, you know, not personal for me, that it's what she's desiring to be with Mom and Dad and Lincoln. So, you know, it's okay.
Yep. So we are doing well, and yeah, we're planning. It's actually going to be just 2 days after Christmas that we
Actually, we go up the day
Nashville.
after Christmas.
Hmm.
The surgery's the 27th, but we're going up on the 26th.
Yeah.
So Jeannie and Gabby will be, you know, hanging out with Ryan, and I'll have the two babies, or the Aria and
Michael.
the baby and the dog. So
That's a lot. That's a lot.
I'm looking forward to it. You know, I'm looking forward to Gabby going back to work, and we have the baby here, and he gets to sleep in the crook of my arm while I'm doing the radio show and helping him to build the brain cells and getting a start for him.
Yeah.
Supporting his initiation into the world of other humans. So feeling pretty blessed.
Wow.
And holding you in a blessing.
Thanks.
And Jonathan.
Thanks.
And the show's about to cut us off.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks a lot.
It is. We are at completion time. All right, dear heart, you have a blessed one. Holding the space for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, take care.
Me for you. Okay. Bye.
All righty. Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Have the best year yet of your eternal life. It's